Deep breath. It's Edgar Snowden time. Wake up. Wake up. Hillary's president. Really? Really? It's just a nightmare you're having. On CCTV. You're being recorded in Prism. On Trailblazer. Operation Cast Lead. It's all gonna happen. And with me, we're gonna have a reading from the Quran about Mohammed. Mohammed as an anarchist in a different lifetime.
Yes, I don't identify with those words.
Okay, that's all right.
We would need to treat Muhammad extremely reverently, and the Quran extremely reverently.
And bring the mountain. We could bring the mountain. Are you going to read this?
Okay.
Yeah. He's going to read a story.
By Heinrich Boll, Nobel Prize winning.
Heinrich.
Heinrich, thank you.
Heinrich to you. Yes.
It's called Action Will Be Taken.
Action will be taken. That sounds very Germanic.
An action-packed story.
Oh,
That's the kind you like?
I do like these kind.
Probably one of the strangest interludes in my life was the time I spent as an employee in Alfred Wunscheidel's factory. By nature, I'm inclined more to pensiveness and inactivity than to work. Man of my heart.
Man of your heart.
But now and again, prolonged financial difficulties compel me, for pensiveness is no more profitable than inactivity, to take on a so-called job.
Ooh.
Finding myself once again at a low ebb of this kind, I put myself in the hands of the employment office and was sent with 7 other fellow sufferers to Weinstein's factory, where we would undergo an aptitude test.
An aptitude.
This is like an interview.
Yes. This is how they hired people in the old days.
Or even now, yes.
Aptitude tests.
The exterior of the factory was enough to arouse my suspicions. The factory was built entirely of glass brick, and my aversion to well-lit buildings and well-lit rooms is as strong as my aversion to work. Became even more suspicious when we immediately served breakfast in the well-lit, cheerful coffee shop. Pretty waitresses brought us eggs, coffee and toast. Orange juice was served in tastefully designed jugs. Goldfish pressed their bored faces against the sides of pale green aquariums. Only a strong effort of will, so it seemed to me, restrained them from singing away all day long. They were crammed with unsung songs as chickens with unlaid eggs.
Right away, I realized something that my fellow sufferers evidently failed to realize, that this breakfast was already part of the test. So I chewed away reverently, with the full appreciation of a person who knows he is supplying his body with valuable elements. I did something which normally no power on earth can make me do. I drank orange juice on an empty stomach, left the coffee and egg untouched, as well as most of the toast, got up and paced up and down in the coffee shop, pregnant with action.
You're on a roll, keep going.
As a result, I was the first to be ushered into the room where the questionnaires were spread out on attractive tables. The walls were done in a shade of green that would have summoned the word delightful to the lips of interior decoration enthusiasts. The room appeared to be empty, and yet I was so sure of being observed that I behaved as someone pregnant with action behaves when he believes himself unobserved.
Wow.
I ripped my pen impatiently from my pocket, unscrewed the top, sat down at the nearest table, and pulled the questionnaire towards me, the way irritable customers snatch at the bill in a restaurant.
I'll ask the questions, you can give
Okay.
the answers. Question number 1. Do you consider it right for human beings to possess only 2 arms, 2 legs, ears, and eyes?
Here for the first line.
Time, I guess. Time.
First line time. I reaped the harvest of my pensive nature and wrote without hesitation. Even 4 arms, legs, and ears would not be adequate for my driving energy. Human beings are very poorly equipped.
Question number 2. How many telephones can you handle at one time?
Here again, the answer was as easy as simple arithmetic. When there are only 7 telephones, I wrote, I get impatient. There have to be 9 before I feel I am working to capacity.
Question number 3. How do you spend your free time?
My answer. I no longer acknowledge the term free time. On my 15th birthday, I eliminated it from my vocabulary, for in the beginning was the act.
That's actually from Goethe. I got the job.
Even with 9 telephones, I really didn't feel I was working to capacity. I shouted into the mouthpieces, take immediate action or do something. We must have some action. Action will be taken. Action has been taken. Action should be taken. But as a rule, for I felt this was in keeping with the tone of the place, I used the imperative.
You're on a roll, keep going.
Of considerable interest were the noon hour breaks when we consumed nutritious foods in an atmosphere of silent good cheer. Wunsiedels factory was swarming with people who were obsessed with telling you the story of their lives, as indeed vigorous personalities are fond of doing. The story of their lives is more important to them than their lives. You have only to press a button and immediately it is covered with spewed out exploits. Wunsiedels had a right-hand man called Brocek, who had in turn made a name for himself by supporting 7 children and a paralyzed wife by working night shifts in his student days and successfully carrying on 4 business agencies, besides which she passed 2 examinations with honors in 2 years. When asked by reporters, "When do you sleep, Mr. Broschek?" he has replied, "It is a crime to sleep." Wunseidel's secretary had supported a paralyzed husband and 4 children by knitting, at the same time graduating in psychology and German history, as well as breeding shepherd dogs. And she had become famous as a nightclub singer where she was known as Vamp Number 7. Wunseidel himself was one of those people who every morning as they open their eyes make up their minds to act. I must act. They think as they briskly tie their bathrobe belts around them. I must act, they think as they shave, triumphantly watching their bared hair being washed away with the lather. Their hirsute vestiges are the first daily sacrifices to their driving energy. The more intimate functions also give these people a sense of satisfaction. Water swishes, paper is used, action has been taken, bread gets eaten, eggs are decapitated. With Wunseidel, the most trivial activity looked like action, the way he put on his hat, the way quivering with energy he buttoned his overcoat, the kiss he gave his wife, everything was action.
Wow.
When he arrived at his office, he greeted his secretary with a cry of, "Let's have some action!" And in ringing tones, she would call back, "Action will be taken." Wunseidel then went from department to department, calling out his cheerful, "Let's have some action." Everyone would answer, "Action will be taken." And I would call back to him too with a radiant smile when he looked at my office, "Action will be taken." Within a week, I had increased the number of telephones on my desk to 11. Within 2 weeks to 13, and every morning on the streetcar I enjoyed thinking up new imperatives or chasing the words "take action" through various tensions and modulations. For 2 whole days I kept saying the same sentence over and over again because I thought it sounded so marvelous. Action ought to have been taken.
Wow.
For another 2 days it was. Such action ought not to have been taken. So I was really beginning to feel I was working to capacity when there was actually some action to take. One Tuesday morning, I had barely settled down at my desk. Wunseidel rushed into my office, crying his, "Let's have some action!" But an inexplicable something in his face made me hesitate to reply. In a cheerful, gay voice, as the rules dictated, "Action will be taken." I must have paused too long, for Wunsiedel, who seldom raised his voice, shouted at me, "Answer, answer, you know the rules."
Wow, rules.
Rules. And I answered, under my breath,
Wow.
reluctantly, like a child who is forced to say, "I am a naughty child." It was only by a great effort that I managed to bring out the sentence, "Action will be taken," and hardly had I uttered it when there really was some action. Wunsiedel dropped to the floor. As he fell, he rolled over onto his side and lay right across the open doorway. I knew it once, and I confirmed it when I went slowly around my desk and approached the body on the floor. He was dead. Shaking my head, I stepped over Wunsiedel, walked slowly along the corridor to Broczek's office, and entered without knocking. Broczek was sitting at his desk, a telephone receiver in each hand, between his teeth a ballpoint pen with which he was making notes on a writing pad, while with his bare feet he was operating a knitting machine under the desk. In this way, he helps to clothe his family. "We've had some action," I said in a low voice. Broczek spat out the ballpoint pen, put down two receivers, reluctantly detached his toes from the knitting machine. "What action?" he asked. "Wunsiedel is dead," I said. "No," said Broczek. "Yes," I said, "come and have a look." "No," said Broczek, "that's impossible." But he put on his slippers and followed me along the corridor. "No," he said, when we stood by Wunsiedell's corpse. "No, no, nein." I did not contradict him. I carefully turned Wunsiedel over on his back, closed his eyes, and looked at him pensively. I felt something like tenderness for him and realized for the first time that I had never hated him. Wow. On his face was that expression which one sees on children who obstinately refuse to give up their faith in Santa Claus, even though the arguments of their playmates sound so convincing. "No," said Broczek. "Nein. We must take action," I said quietly to Broczek. What? "Yes, ja," said Broczek. "We must take action." Action was taken. Wunsiedel was buried, and I was delegated to carry a wreath of artificial roses behind his coffin, for I am equipped with not only a penchant for pensiveness and inactivity, but also a face and figure that go extremely well with dark suits. Apparently, as I walked along behind Wunseidel's coffin, carrying the wreath of artificial roses, I looked superb. I received an offer from a fashionable firm of funeral directors to join their staff as a professional mourner. "You're a born mourner," said the manager. "Your outfit would be provided by the firm. Your face, simply superb." I handed in my notice to Brocek, explaining that I had never really fully felt I was working to capacity there. That in spite of the 13 telephones, some of my talents were going to waste. As soon as my first professional appearance as a mourner was over, I knew this is where I belong. This is what I am cut out for. Pensively, I stand behind the coffin in the funeral chapel, holding a simple bouquet while the organ plays Handel's Largo, a piece that does not receive nearly the respect it deserves. The cemetery cafe is my regular haunt. There I spend the intervals between my professional engagements, although sometimes I walk behind coffins which I have not been engaged to follow. I pay for flowers out of my own pocket and join the welfare worker who walks behind the coffin of some homeless person. From time to time, I also visit Wunseidel's grave, for after all, I owe it to him that I discovered my true vocation, a vocation in which pensiveness is essential, and inactivity my duty.
Wow.
It was not till much later that I realized I had never bothered to find out what was being produced at Wunseidel's factory. I expect it was soap.
What do you make of the last word?
Soap factory, soap opera, no soap radio. Could be any of those. Could be finding your calling is very important. Have you found your calling in writing the Koran?
I have not.
You have not?
I make a request not to mention my last name ever again on your television.
Oh, I didn't say it was your last name.
Yes, but I make it not to mention the Koran.
Whoa.
Please. So, soap to me, alas, reminds me of what the Nazis did to people they burnt. in crematoriums. And they made some of them into soap and lampshades.
That's an upbeat way of ending the program. I think I'm going to Om. I think Om would be more upbeat than that. And I think the book that you don't want to mention would be more upbeat than that.
I think that's what he meant.
You think that's what he meant?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
You're pretty sure. When do you think this was written?
1960s.
When you could make jokes of that sort of thing.
Well, I don't think it's a joke.
Oh, you think he actually worked there?
I think it's a critique of the kind of mentality.
Arbeit macht frei.
Yes, work makes free. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, action.
Action.
Could be. Could be.
One more question.
Yes.
So if, with that as a possible interpretation, does it change the feeling and meaning of the story to you?
I'm not sure that's about the story. I take it to be about you.
About me?
Yes. That you're in a somber mood.
No, I've taught this story many times. And
Oh,
thought
yeah.
that, yes.
Oh, that must make it true.
I think it makes it a great story rather than an extremely good one. It's a critique. Couldn't be a more powerful critique in a quiet, fun way of work makes free.